A woman or a girl needs to really understand their worth in order to really, against all odds and all obstacles that they face, to make the best positive changes happen in their life. So you hear about this all the time still. You see it from the data that you're exposed to. There are certain issues that women still face across the world. So I wouldn't even say it's an issue in the emerging or developing markets, but it's a worldwide phenomenon. You know, things such as equal work for equal pay, gender discrimination within the workforce, sexual harassment, etc. These issues are still rife, and I think until certain sensibilities, certain mentalities, behavioural change isn't there, it will continue to persist. I think we need more confidence within women. I think women can sometimes be their own worst enemies as well. I think if they're empowered from the beginning, I think it also starts from their home institutions, early on, early stages of life institutions, education, home. If they have the right ecosystem around them to make them feel purposeful, to make them feel worthy, and I think that's really critical. How do you really have that kind of gutso attitude to life as well? I'm not saying it's easy, especially when you have certain voices around you that always hold you back. But I think it needs to begin with yourself first. If you can understand and love yourself and really understand your worthiness, I think half the battle is won. I think it's exciting. I think there's a lot of optimism. There are a lot of opportunities that women across the world have the potential to have in today's day and age. I think it's got much better than how it was quite a few years ago. I think there's been a lot of campaigning efforts, a lot of grassroots momentum as well, to get a better representation of women, especially in the boardroom, as they would say, in the corporate world. And I think it really helps when you have good role models and mentors to look up to as well. For everything that she has encountered in her life, and I think the biggest lesson I've ever learned from her is to convert those challenges into opportunities and always strive for the best. I think for my mother, just speaking on her behalf, from what I understand and what I've also seen growing up, I think it was very, very rare to have a woman deviate from the traditional professions that Asians are meant to be in. You've got to be a lawyer, you've got to be a doctor, you've got to be in the medics, or a financier, or a banker, etc. So she deviated from that. So whilst even having a property business, she was passionate about communications, she was passionate about the power that communication has in building and breaking businesses, and how purposeful a business it is as well. So I think that was one thing. So just the attitudes in terms of, can any Asian, regardless of gender, be in a profession as they say, as soft as communications? Secondly, I think also attitudes towards women. I mean, we're talking about the 90s, I know it's not as prehistoric as the dinosaur age, but there were still certain attitudes and mindsets that were in existence. A woman had to perform in a particular way. A woman's job should have been in a particular profession, which my mother, never really strived to be. And I think she had her own agenda, and I think so rightly that she did. And that's what kind of really drove her passion to do well in life. And I think I wouldn't necessarily say that I'm very thankful that I haven't had to experience the similar sort of challenges that my mother had to experience growing up. I think from the 90s to the current scenario, there has been a lot of change. I am seeing a lot of women in the business and communications sector, especially even in the social impact sector, holding C-suite positions, which is a big inspiration. There's loads of pros, and there's quite a few cons as well, because your mother becomes your boss. Obviously now, so kind of left the show to me, and for me to run the company now. But I think having somebody so close to you, I mean, my mother's more of my friend than she is my mother anyway, that you can confide in, that you can actually really share your daily struggles. I mean, she gets it. She's been there, she's done that. If anything, I can just, take her advice, and I'm so grateful that she's there, always. So I do have her kind of on tap, which really helps. I think it's a little bit of trial and error still, but I think you just need to be very mindful of your relationship with whoever, whatever that relationship is, and whoever close you have that relationship with. It could be a husband, it could be your parent, it could be siblings as well. I think mutual respect, maintaining that sort of independence from each other in terms of, you know, to really create that demarcation between work and personal life. The sort of work that I'm engaged in, especially the social impact sector, especially with my company WWW, The World We Want, seeing the positive impact our work in awareness, action, advocacy in the social impact sector can make. Work doesn't feel like work when you know that there's a higher plane that you're climbing now, and the impact that you're making around you. The biggest underlining message that we really wanted to convey is how the goals are accessible, how the goals actually mean something for every single person on this planet. And for that, we need to decentralize the conversation. It shouldn't just be a conversation that the big boys hold in society, so whether it's government leaders or corporate leaders, we need to decentralize the conversation so it becomes household chatter, because you can only really fight for your rights if you know what your rights are. And I think a lot of people think, oh, 10 years is a long time, but no, we only have 10 years to end global poverty, reduce inequalities and tackle climate change, and a lot needs to be done still. It's not an overnight process, it takes time. Sometimes you really have to think about, how do I penetrate a generation of an audience, and how do we change the way they think, the way they, you know, the things that they believe in, and that takes time. As there's not a single institution in the world that holds the key to solving the world's problem, at the same time there's not a single institution in the world where we can apportion the blame as well. And I think the power resides in, and I'm a very big believer in this, and I've said this earlier, cross-sector collaboration, putting egos aside, but literally getting countries, corporates, celebrities, charities, NGOs, young activists, change makers together to have an informed discussion, but not just make it a talk show, but actually think about the advocacy, think about the action that you need to kind of implement as well to achieve those goals. I think the media has a really important role to play, because just as it's a window to our world, it's a reflection of our society. There's also a bigger role that the media has in terms of shaping society as well, through the messages that are being disseminated, because those messages have the potential to influence. So any medium that can influence public opinion is critical, and it needs to be taken care of. You've got great minds, you've got young minds. India's the youngest country in the world. I believe is at the cusp of change. So let's harness that discussion in India, so that we have a conversation that's rooted in the Global South and that's led by the Global South as well. Continue to be determined. Whatever you do, make sure it's meaningful. And thirdly, always have purpose intact. So yeah, so I think it all rests in really having a purposeful vision.